So you discovered the affair and you confronted them. And in that conversation, while they said all of the right things and they begged you to stay, they begged you to give them another chance. And they promised you that they've learned from this and that this time that they would do better. And you believed them. And then some time passed and you discovered that either the previous affair had been ongoing or that they had continued to have new affairs. So what then? How in the world do you resolve whatever it is they promised to you on that day when you first discovered the affair with how they have been acting in the meantime? They said they wanted one thing, yet they have been doing another. Well, the way that I see it, those that begged you to stay, begged you to give them another chance, and yet continued to cheat, did so for one of three reasons. Now, I'm going to start off with the least favorable, and that is maybe they were just playing you the entire time. Maybe perhaps they never actually had any intention of stopping the affairs. Maybe everything that you saw on that day when they were begging and pleading with you was simply an act because they wanted to keep you in their lives for whatever it is that you bring to them. Maybe it's the stability, maybe it's family. But they also wanted to continue to do the things that they wanted to do. And so they told you those things that you wanted to hear to pacify you, to keep you there, to keep you in the dark, so that they could continue to lead the double life that they had been all along. Now, if this resonates with you, I am so sorry because this is such a brutal realization that you're not dealing with a cheater who is remorseful, who made some bad decisions and now wants to learn and grow from those. Instead, you're dealing with somebody who has no qualms about using others for their own gains and fails to have empathy for others. And that's a brutal realization. Now, not everybody that continues to cheat falls into that category. Another one that can be quite prevalent is that they are terrified of losing you. And when they're confronted with the reality of the affair, they are blinded with fear. They are absolutely just paralyzed at the thought of you leaving them. And so because of that fear, they are going to tell you anything that they can to try to get you to stay. And the difference with this is that they're not intentionally seeking out to manipulate you. Instead, they're responding from their own fear. And they probably haven't even put any thought into the reality of ending the affair or changing the behaviors that are leading them into multiple affairs. Instead, all they can think about is doing what they need to do to keep you from stepping out, to keep you from walking away. And a lot of times people in this category will do half the work of the affair recovery, meaning that they can be more present in your relationship. They can be more attentive. They can be more loving. And so from your perspective, it can feel like everything is okay, that they're doing the work. But they haven't done the inner work and the deeper work to recognize what led them astray in the first place, what caused them to go down this path. And so because of that, they end up back in that same position again. And sometimes people in this category, they can go quite some period without cheating again. Maybe it's months, even years. But then because they haven't done that inner work, well, they're still susceptible to the same things that got them the first time. And this is a much murkier situation than the first one. The first one, you're dealing with somebody who is never going to change. Using people is just their MO. It's how they exist in the world. The second person, well, it's a little less clear. Sometimes they may end up facing kind of their own inner truth, and they may do that work at some point. But you can't force that to happen. That has to be their decision, and it's going to be on their timeline. And you never know when that's actually going to happen. And so that's one where you have to make a decision of, am I willing to wait? Am I willing to stand by them while they're continuing to not look at themselves? Or do I need to set boundaries for myself of what I will and will not put up with? And then the third category is related to the second, but the motivation is a little bit different. These are ones who feel great shame about the affair. And they probably felt that shame before you even confronted them with it. And so when confronted, that shame comes to the surface and they desperately want to stop that part of themselves. They're not happy with that. They don't want to be doing those things. And so they promise you that they will never do this again. And they deeply believe that that is the case because they so desperately want for it to be the case. But then similar to the second group, they don't always do that inner work. They don't always fully confront that. They think that if I don't want something to happen, then it won't happen, without recognizing all of those little decisions and all of those patterns that can become ingrained in all of us that might lead them back to that same place without them even, well, really being conscious about it. And this can be a difficult type of cheater to deal with because when they say they love you, they really do mean it. But the flip side of that is how much they hate themselves and how much they bury that shame. And then they subvert that into these behaviors that are so damaging to all of those around them. And again, like those in the second group, at some point you have to make a decision. Are you willing to stay and work with them on this? Or is this something that is more than you're willing to live with? And you need to make a decision to let them go for your own well-being. Now, while people in group one, those manipulators that are just using people, absolutely exist, I think most cheaters probably are a mix of 2 and 3. You know, they're afraid of the consequences. They're ashamed of what they have done or what they are doing. They're bargaining. You know, maybe if I just do this one thing, then everything is going to be okay. And overall, they're not super great at self-reflection and then doing that work on themselves to recognize why it is they did this in the first place and what changes they need to make to really keep it from happening again. And for those of us who've been cheated on, at some point, their reasons and their explanations and their motivations don't really matter. What we have to look at is what we are willing to tolerate, what we deserve, how long we're willing to stand by, how long we're willing to work with them, and when we need to make a decision for ourselves.